Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, we're going to talk a lot about vulnerability hangovers as a fearful avoidant attachment style. So this is a topic brought up from one of the members inside the Personal Development School. And by the way, if you're new to my channel, I do daily breakthrough videos for you to learn powerful tools to upgrade your life and your relationships at the subconscious level, which is where real change can take place. So we're going to talk a little bit about what a vulnerability hangover is, and then what we can do to sort of break out of this, especially as a fearful avoidant attachment style. So first and foremost, I can't take credit for the term. The term, from where I originally heard it, was coined by Brene Brown, who I imagine, I don't follow her work super closely, but I read one of her books for sure, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I imagine she was a DA at some point in her journey, because she talks a lot about fearing vulnerability, shutting down, feeling shame, a lot of those things that are the actual core wounds of dismissive avoidance. Now, fearful avoidants feel a lot of shame as well, but fearful avoidants tend to feel more guilt than they tend to feel shame. And when they do tend to feel shame, it's more intense and triggering type shame, like extreme shame at high levels, like a 9 or 10 out of 10, but not as pervasively. Dismissive avoidants, just to give you that sort of comparison, tend to feel less extreme shame, though they can feel shame pretty high on the scale there. But it tends to be more pervasive, and they get triggered into feeling shamed more easily or ashamed more easily. So, dismissive avoidants tend to have more of that I am defective core wound, and that tends to be what causes their shame. Fearful avoidants can have an I am defective core wound too, if they're truly seen and understood and open. But fearful avoidants tend to feel more shame around the idea that I am bad. Like, I messed up, I did something wrong, now people think I'm a bad person. And that's really where they tend to retract and like sort of go inwards. They also can feel shame around people thinking that they are weak, people thinking that they are needy, or people thinking that they are unworthy in some form. Okay, so those tend to be the big triggers for fearful avoidance. So let's talk about this for a moment. When we look at the core beliefs, these tend to be the main triggerers of shame, right? So we tend to have these ideas that are like whatever these belief imprints are that we have at a subconscious level. When these things are activated, when we think people feel this way towards us, this is when these wounds, these beliefs, these ideas become really active, and they put out that emotional response, that intense emotional reaction within us. So fearful avoidance specifically, in order of most common and most pervasive to least pervasive, we tend to have I am bad and I am unworthy right at the top. And whenever somebody, so just to give you some examples, if a fearful avoidant thinks somebody thinks that they are bad or did something wrong or immoral or greedy or impure in some form, that can be really, triggering for fearful avoidant. They can feel a lot of shame around that core wound. If they tend to have a core wound that says, I am unworthy, so I didn't earn my worth, I underperformed, I underachieved, I didn't show up, I made a big mistake and messed up everything, I am unworthy can be a huge pain point for fearful avoidance as well. Fearful avoidants tend to believe that they have to earn connection in the world by being good and by being worthy, at least at a subconscious level. They may then have a secondary response to this if they've struggled with authority figures growing up, or then they rebel against those own internal beliefs that they're projecting onto the outside world. So they'll rebel against needing to be good and needing to be worthy, even though those things are actually still secretly driving them on one form. It's like competing needs at the subconscious level, right? It's like those drivers that are driving those behaviors, but then the need to rebel against that every so often. So anyway, so those can be big pervasive triggers that lead to shame, things that trigger shame. And then also they can still have I am defective, which can be something that pops up for the fearful avoidant, or I'm not good enough can also make somebody feel shame, but it tends to make somebody feel more like disappointment, sadness, regret, those types of emotions. And then also fearful avoidance can feel shame if they feel I am stupid. And I really don't like this core belief. Like, I don't even like to use that language. It's just a very like harsh word, but it's a core belief people tend to carry. And really it tends to be more like I'm foolish. Like, I got fooled. Somebody took advantage of me. I was foolish in front of a group of people. That can lead to a lot of shame for fearful avoidance, as well as the core belief, I am weak. So these tend to be the big triggers, and they happen for the fearful avoidant whenever they are seen as vulnerable in any of those areas. So if they made a mistake in front of people, vulnerability hangover, big time. If they were not earning their worth in a relationship and they opened up to somebody, and somebody saw their flaws and saw that they were unworthy, not because people are ever going to be like, oh, you're unworthy because you have a flaw, but because the fearful avoidant projects that somebody might feel that way about them. Or if they open up about their past and they had something that they felt immoral about or bad about, they cheated on a partner in the past, they made this big mistake in the workplace, whatever it might be, like those things will be things that can trigger that vulnerability hangover if they're opening up about those specific things. Or if they open up about how they got fooled in the past or something like that, they got taken advantage of, they can have that vulnerability hangover around that. So vulnerability hangover is really just the idea that you open up, it triggers these painful core beliefs at a subconscious level, that emotion comes out, gets projected outwards, and then the avoidant personality copes by like going inwards and pulling away and retracting as a means to try to stay safe. So if you have any of this dynamic happening, it means you've got these core beliefs taking place. And if you want to do a deep dive into like reprogramming these so you can set them to rest once and for all, I highly recommend checking out our 7-day free trial. You can do like a deep dive into a lot of our reprogramming tools for these things. And I would start with the Fearful Avoidant Reprogramming course. It's all about reprogramming your attachment cell with a focus on these core wounds. And I'll put a link to that in the description box below. Now, what you'll often see from a fearful avoidant when they do open themselves, they do share themselves, even if they feel like, oh, you saw me, I'm seen and heard, you saw my flaws, I'm weak, you think I'm weak, you think I'm defective, these core beliefs that can trigger and come out. You'll often see the fearful avoidant sort of go inward, similar to the dismissive avoidant, but just for shorter periods of time. So they may push the person away that they opened up to because they feel these negative emotions in that dynamic between the two of you. If you are the fearful avoidant, push away, create that space, and that will usually last for like half a day, a few hours, maybe a full day, maybe a day and a half. But then usually what will take place is that then that fearful avoidant who's in that more avoidant side will feel the disconnect, which is the core wound. That disconnect will trigger them, and then they'll want to close that gap because they'll be sort of in their anxious side, and they may come back to sort of center in that relationship dynamic. So hopefully this answers a lot of questions you guys might have had about vulnerability hangovers, where like what that actually means, where the stuff comes from, sort of dynamics that are taking place at a subconscious level. Let me know if you have any other questions in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this channel and this beautiful community. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.